Yes.
Can you check if we have a quorum?
Jerry Abraham?
Here.
Cindy Butts?
Here.
Wendy Clark?
I'm here.
Kylie Goslin?
Here.
Tim Hodges?
Here.
Steve Kidowitz?
Here.
Kathy McKinnon?
Here.
Salem Mascara Bruno?
Here.
George Perez?
Here.
Franklin Perry? Sarah Sanders?
Here.
Lisa Tepper Bates? Gwendolyn Thames? And Greg Ugalde?
Here.
We have a quorum?
You have a quorum.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 10:03, and it's a pleasure to see you all. Happy Thursday, almost Friday, and almost March 1st. Cannot believe that it's going to be a year since we have been doing this. But it's always good to see you. Shelley, could you process with the public comments?
Sure. Good morning. If there are members from the public who wish to provide a comment, please identify yourself before speaking. To ensure that everyone has the opportunity, we will limit the comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment? Any comments? Okay, we'll end the public comment period now, and I'll turn the meeting back over to the Commissioner.
Thank you, Shelley.
Welcome.
Anthony is going to provide us the CEO Executive Director's report.
Sure. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. As the Commissioner said, can't believe it's been a year, and it's been an unusually snowy month. So it's been a really interesting start to the year so far. But I wanted to start off with some good news. Most of you will remember that CHFA made an application for an award under the U.S. Treasury's
This meeting is
Capital
being
Magnet
recorded.
Fund program through its CDFI fund. And we recently found out that we were awarded $3 million through the program. It's a huge achievement. It's the first award of its kind for the state, and only 5 state housing finance agencies have been successful in this round. So we feel incredibly proud and grateful for this award. A big shout out to Masuda and her team for a successful application. As we said in the application, we're going to be using CMF funds along with an enterprise level investment of equal amount from our Opportunity Fund or the ITA to use as a source of capital for our 9% low-income housing tax credit project to enable deep income targeting for households at or below 50% AMI, including supportive housing units for chronically homeless and disabled, and prioritizing projects that contribute to community reinvestment and revitalization in neighborhoods of distress. So we're expecting to leverage this new source of funding in the 9% round currently under consideration. In addition to that, NCSHA had its first ever racial justice symposium yesterday. The forum brought together housing policy researchers and HFAs in a discussion of how to enable greater degrees of housing equity and racial justice work through public policy setting, business practices, and partnerships. I was one of 4 housing finance agency EDs who were invited to speak, and I talked about Connecticut and CHFA and the work we've been doing and the work we need to do. The conference was recorded. I'm happy to share the video when I receive it with any board members who are interested. We have a fairly light agenda. Today, Masuda is going to present a draft of the multifamily preservation policy that was discussed at Mortgage Committee as well. We're not asking for your vote on the policy or the draft board resolution for your consideration today, but we expect to come back hopefully next month for your approval. It concerns really how to preserve our multifamily portfolio in the face of aging portfolio as well as long-term affordability set to expire on thousands of units over the next decade. And we want to adopt an intentional strategy and stance with respect to preservation. And it's a redraft of our current preservation policy. And so we're really asking for your feedback in terms of how we consent to prepayment of loans in our portfolio, understanding that there may be various scenarios and market conditions at play. I think a few board members were interested in understanding how the fixing of the 4% LIHTC rate is going to impact our pipeline and developments in general. We are hoping to bring that discussion forward for your consideration next month and follow that up with a discussion of home ownership strategies the following month. So that's the plan as of today, and I will turn it back over to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandini. Any questions for Nandini? All right. Robert is going to present the legislative updates. It says federal, but if there is any update on the state, Robert, can you also mention it?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. As you probably realized, Nandini included in her written ED report a federal update, and I don't want to belabor that too much, but do want to expound upon it a little bit here this morning. Of note, as you probably all realize by now, there's a new political landscape in Washington, D.C., where Democrats have unified control of government, so they control the presidency as well as both houses of Congress. Although of note, the margins in Congress are quite close. Democrats hold a 10-seat majority in the House, so they can only lose 4 votes on any measure. And actually, the Senate is a 50-50 split where Vice President Harris theoretically could break any ties. And that new landscape that we see is impacting policymaking currently and will going forward. And of note, kind of the big item that's out there that's being impacted is the so-called America Rescue Plan, which is the nearly $2 trillion stimulus package that President Biden originally proposed earlier this year. And if you've been paying attention, you probably realized that that's proceeding apace. It has already made it through the various relevant committees in Congress in the House, that have marked up the bill. The Budget Committee's already approved it, and the plan is before the week is out that the House will take up the bill and vote on it, perhaps as early today or tomorrow. Once that happens, it'll move over to the Senate. The Senate is plans to proceed quite quickly with the bill. They've decided to bypass the normal committee process, and the bill has been proceeding according to this kind of esoteric budget reconciliation process that allows the Senate to pass a bill with 50+1 votes as opposed to this normal 60 vote margin that you normally see. So I think we're getting a chance perhaps to see Vice President Harris use her tie-breaking vote for one of the first occasions. And just in terms of what's in that particular legislation, I'm sure you probably heard a number of the major provisions which pertain to additional stimulus checks for people, state and local government aid, but there is substantial housing dollars in the bill, including $25 billion for rental assistance, which it also includes $19 billion for emergency rental assistance on top of the $25 billion that Congress appropriated at the end of last year. And there's also $10 billion in homeowner assistance. And the bill is, in that regard, is supposedly modeled on the hardest hit fund, which was an outgrowth of the Great Recession earlier the previous decade. And although the kind of guidelines need to be fleshed out by Treasury and HUD eventually, it seems to be fairly broad, and there'll be opportunity for states to help homeowners with mortgage payments, with interest rate reductions, with property taxes, utilities, and such. So we'll probably learn more about that in the coming days as the Senate is hoping, or Congress is hoping, to wrap up the bill by mid-March when extended unemployment benefits end. So stay tuned on that front. And then just a couple other things on the federal side. You probably have all seen or heard by now that the CDC extended the federal eviction moratorium until 3/31 of this year. FHA, USDA, and the VA extended their foreclosure moratoria and their mortgage forbearance programs through the end of June, while Fannie and Freddie have extended their foreclosure moratorium until the end of March. And then just finally on the federal side, I'll say there's one other item that you all may want to pay attention to a little bit. It's beyond this kind of massive stimulus package that's out there. There's talk about an infrastructure bill as well, a $2 trillion infrastructure bill. And I know that a number of the associations that we deal with, such as NCSHA, are pushing for housing construction to be part of that. And I know that there's talk about a bill in the past that we've paid attention to, the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act, that should have some of its provisions included in that as well. So stay tuned on that front. On the state side, we're paying attention to a couple bills that have an immediate impact or an impact directly on CHFA. There's a bill out there that would impact our down payment assistance program. It basically would, the intent, I believe, is to codify in statute that program needs to offer closing costs. We do that currently, but it would require that we do so going forward. There's another bill that props up an additional EMAP-like program out there. And then we obviously have a bill on our side that we're looking to do. We reintroduced that would allow us to obtain insurance instead of surety bonds on board members and staff and like. It's kind of a good government efficiency measure. So that's all I have right now. And thanks so much for your indulgence.
Thank you, Rob. Any questions? Okay, they let you easy, Rob.
I know, first time we get off easy.
Thank you. Moving on, wow, Finance Committee, no action items or reports. Good job, Sarah. So we're moving on to the Mortgage Committee. We have two items that we need to take action. One is a refinance of Varnum House, and Masuda, you are going to present the resolution.
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. As the Commissioner mentioned, we have two resolutions before you that were recommended by Mortgage Committee. I would also welcome Mortgage Committee to share their comments, and we do have staff available to respond to questions. So the first action item is Varnum House. The vote in Mortgage Committee was unanimous. One comment came up about the high cost of lumber and whether that this development can absorb any increase that may affect this development. So we are going to have that conversation with the owner. Given that this is not a new construction, this is an acquisition rehab, so we feel that the cost of lumber, even though it has increased, it may not have a direct impact on this development. My team was also able to go back and look at the line item, and it looks like the cost of lumber here is fairly minimal, but in any case, we will have the conversation with the owner to make sure that they are that they can absorb any increases as necessary in order to keep this project moving forward. So the action before you is authorize the prepayment of 2 CHFA loans totaling approximately $4.3 million, in issuance of up to $9.3 million in tax-exempt bond proceeds to fund a permanent mortgage of up to 40 years at an interest rate of up to 4.5% to Barnum Preservation, which is an affiliate of the related companies. The proposed financing will improve the physical condition of the property and extend the Section 8 contract to preserve the affordability for seniors earning at or below 50 and 60% of area median income. So with that said, we have staff available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Matsuda. May I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll make that motion that we approve.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any questions for Matsuda? Okay. Shelley, we have the roll call.
Sure. Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Cindy Butts, Cindy?
Oh, did you not hear me? Aye.
Oh, sorry. Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Kylie Goslin,
Yes.
Kim Hodges,
Abstain.
Steve Kitowitz,
Yes.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
Salem Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Yes.
Sarah Sanders, Lisa Tepper Bates,
Yes.
Gwendolyn Thames, Greg Ugaldi,
Aye.
one abstention.
Motion carries. Thank you, Shelley. Matsuda, can you continue on with the presentation of the resolution for the renewal of investment in suburban and rural affordable housing state assistance program?
Yes, the action before you is approval to extend the agreement for the Suburban and Rural Affordable Housing Technical Assistance Program, also known as Housing Connections, for an additional one-year period through February 26, 2022. Compensation to LISC for the administration of the program is $250,000, and the source will be coming out of the existing Recycled Community Investment Act, or CIA funding. This program will continue to support CHFA's mission by increasing the affordable housing stock in the state and is very much in line with CHFA's strategic plan. The vote in Mortgage Committee was unanimous. Again, we have staff available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Matsuda. May I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
I'll second.
Discussion. Any questions for Matsuda? Okay. Shelley, let's do the roll call.
Jerry Abrahams,
Aye.
Cindy Butts,
Yes.
Wendy Clark,
Yes.
Kylie Goslin,
Yes.
Kim Hodges,
Aye.
Steve Kitowitz,
Yes.
Kathy McKinnon,
Aye.
Salem Mascara Bruno,
Yes.
George Perez,
Yes.
Franklin Perry,
Aye.
Sarah Sanders,
Aye.
Lisa Tepper Bates,
Yes.
Greg Ugaldi.
Aye.
Unanimous?
Motion carries. Thank you, Shelley. Matsuda, you're still on the hook with us. You're going to give us a highlight on the policy statement on prepayment. Right? And then the board members can give us their comments. It will go back, and at the next board meeting, we will bring it back for approval. So, Matsuda?
Thank you. I'm pleased to present proposed revisions to CHFA's Reservation of Housing Affordability Policy. This policy was last revised in 2017. So as Madam Chair indicated, we're here to seek input on this proposed revisions, and we would be coming back at the March board meeting to finalize the policy. By way of background, the Strategic Capital Adequacy Study that was done by CSG back in October recommended that CHFA consider adopting a prepayment and preservation strategy for its seasoned multifamily loans. Additionally, one of the initiatives in the strategic plan that we have for this year is preservation of affordable housing, including refinance and prepayment of seasoned loans. So with the aging of the portfolio and to ensure the long-term financial and physical health of these properties, we also conducted an analysis of Chfa's loan portfolio. We also looked at other states to identify best practices that could be embedded into this proposed policy. So in the analysis, we identified properties that are in the portfolio who would be a good candidate for a refinance with CHFA. As you very well know, in the last several months, we have brought a number of those transactions before you that are part of an acquisition, refinance, or in some cases, sale and purchase. Additionally, in researching other states, we identified best practices that were incorporated in the preservation guidelines, which will be a separate document that multifamily will follow once this policy is approved. And the guidelines get into much more technical detail in terms of the process, as well as again, just the technical components that we will be following. So just very quickly here, I'm just going to highlight some of the key changes for you. First, this policy will formalize the prepayment parameters and provide the framework for preserving the long-term affordability of CHFA's portfolio. As you are aware, while the board has approved prepayment requests in the past, the current process is ad hoc. So formalizing the prepayment parameters will result in transparency and clarity for Chfa customers as well as for staff. And then secondly, as I mentioned, the preservation policy was cleaned up to move certain technical components and related process changes to the preservation guidelines instead, and really keep the policy at high level and really, have it serve as more of a roadmap rather than to get into a lot of the technical details. So to the extent, if there are transactions where the loan documents currently allow prepayment of these loans, those loans would not be subject to the prepayment parameters that are outlined here. So in summary, staff is recommending the following parameters. No multifamily loan can prepay prior to the 15th year following the date of commencement of amortization. So when can loans do prepay? The prepayment may be prepaid in full after 15 years by virtue of refinance with CHFA, subject to the conditions of applicable CHFA requirements, which would also include a 1% fee. Prepayment may be allowed in full after 20 years and is subject to, again, CHFA's applicable requirements, including fee of 1% of the outstanding loan balance. So to streamline the process, the CEO, executive director would be given delegated authority to approve the prepayment requests that meet the conditions that are being proposed in the policy. These conditions are outlined on page 2 that is in front of you. So I'm going to, again, just very quickly summarize these for you. Again, the prepayment of the 1% would apply. New and refinance transactions would come to the board, and they still have to abide with all of CHFA's requirements, which could be the QEP, policies, procedures, underwriting standards. Long-term affordability must be retained. We have different types of transactions in the portfolio, some that have Section 8 contracts, some may have rental subsidy through the state, a number of them have tax credits, so we want to make sure that depending on what the restrictions are, that those restrictions are maintained going forward. Chfa will also require the maintenance of affordability for a minimum of 15 years following the prepayment under a modified extended low-income housing commitment or regulatory to ensure that the affordable housing stock is not lost. So this could be particularly important in an area where you have high costs, or in some cases, if it's an area maybe where you have high concentration of affordable housing, you may want the discretion to allow for some of those units to convert into market. So some of it is going to just kind of be based on market conditions and how the overall performance to provide, to maximize the plan of finance going forward or repositioning the property going forward. Regulatory and programmatic oversight will continue. So Chfa will continue to go out for our designee, in this case is Spectrum, performing physical inspections, as well as, collecting annual certifications from the tenants to make sure that those ongoing monitoring requirements will continue. We do have, as I mentioned, transactions where there's HUD resources or state resources, so we want to make sure that we do get consent from those funders as part of approving that prepayment. So again, the board will still be required to approve new and refinance transactions, and in instances where the CEO, executive director, does not exercise the authority to approve a prepayment request, as well as situations where facts deviate from the conditions outlined in the preservation policy that warrant consideration and Chfa's support. I'm not going to go through in great detail as far as some of the other criteria, but we will reserve the right to review and approve prepayment requests, and these factors will include qualification of the buyer, their management agent, looking at the capital needs assessment, looking at, again, the physical condition of the property, the reserves, as well as other factors to ensure that that these requirements contribute to the sustainability and feasibility of the transaction. So with that said, this is an opportunity to solicit input from the board, and we will come back at a future board meeting to present the final approval. The one comment that was mentioned in mortgage committee was if there would be a mechanism in terms of reporting back to the board when a prepayment is approved. So the majority of the time when these transactions involve CHFA financing, those would normally come to the board anyway. A situation would be where a prepayment is after year 20 and they don't want to refinance that mortgage with CHFA. So we can think about putting a mechanism in place where the board would receive a report as part of a monthly board report. It would be included on the consent agenda, so you would be able to see any transactions that were approved under the delegated approval authority. So again, with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Masuda. It's open for discussion. Board members have questions or have comments.
This is Sarah. I have a general question. So is the goal here to make prepayments more accessible to the projects? So we're loosening it up and allowing more prepayments, correct? And what's the advantage to the developer? Take out equity at the time of refinancing. Is that part of what this does for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. The benefits will vary. So in some cases, by allowing the prepayment and by refinancing that transaction with CHFA, we're able to offer more favorable financing because in some cases maybe the interest rate is higher than where rates are today. We're also addressing any physical needs, any deferred maintenance. So we are, improving the living conditions for the residents. Additionally, in the case of a purchase and sale, maybe the owner no longer wants to own and operate the property. So when there's a purchase and sale, this is also an opportunity to exchange hands. There could be equity that's being taken out. So what this does is it provides greater flexibility. Again, while the board has been very gracious, they've approved these transactions that have come to the board previously, but the current parameters have been somewhat, it's been ad hoc. And so what this does is it just provides that transparency and clarity for staff and also for the customers.
Any other questions for Masuda?
I have one. I have a comment, I guess, that I'd just like to add. And I work at the Connecticut Association of Realtors. One of our concerns is sometimes housing policy unintentionally creates an opportunity gap for the people who live there. And one of the prime places that happens is with annual income verifications. So if someone has an opportunity to be promoted in their job or to accept a bonus or to have a salary increase, they often have to say no because of these annual income verifications. So I think with certain projects where there's a federal limitation, where there's no choice but to do it, then there's sort of a restriction according to that. That anytime there's an opportunity to not say to the person who lives there that they're going to have their salary checked every year, so they can't, I mean, they end up in continued poverty because they can't get, they have to make a choice between their job and their housing unit. So I really hope that as much as possible when we look at this, and especially a policy statement that says that we care about someone's future employment opportunities, that if there's any chance to not put a restriction on an annual employment verification, that we take that opportunity and to really look at where our policies create an opportunity gap while trying to preserve something known as the affordability of the unit, because we're seriously, as a state and as a people, hurting people every time we do that. So I would just like for that focus to happen.
Cindy, thanks for that feedback. And if I can try to address your concern here. So the majority of the properties that we have in CHFA's portfolio happen to be under the low-income housing tax credit program. So a lot of the requirements are through the tax credit program, through IRS, through HUD. And so while there is a annual income certification that's required, at the same time, under the low-income housing tax credit program, a tenant's income can increase during tenancy to exceed 140% of the allowable household income. So in other words, they're looking at the income when that individual qualified under at the time of move-in. It's not meant to penalize that household from increasing their income. So again, their income can increase. They can still reside in the tax credit property and not be forced to leave. At the same time, if someone's income is increasing, the goal is also to hopefully move those into home ownership, right? Or move them into maybe market rate developments, because that way, you're freeing that restricted unit to somebody who's truly deserving. So with the tax credit program, there is flexibility. Some of the other programs like HUD, it may be more restrictive. Unfortunately, that's just the reality of the programs and the restrictions that we have to work with, because these funding sources are critical to making these developments financially viable.
Well, but someone who comes in very low income, say they're making $5,000 a year, and they get a job that might pay them $25,000 a year, they're still under the amount. That's probably a bad example. They came in at one amount, but the amount of getting a job, period, could increase that easily. I just think if there's any chance to not do that, and I don't think it's true that someone, just because they got a job, can move into market rate housing affordability, because they have not had the ability to save for a down payment. They have not had the opportunity to accept a job at a higher income level where they had that job for more than a year. And we're working on federal policy, too, through our National Association of Realtors and others. But I just think if there is an opportunity for us to not think that someone can move into market rate rents or home ownership with just $1 an hour raise or a bonus that they might get one time, I think it would be great if we could not have restrictive housing policies at times that someone might have opportunity to stay there more than a year. It's just the feedback I'd like to give to this proposal.
I would like to piggyback on what Cindy was saying. I mean, maybe a possible solution is that there's a period where people have chance to be able to get coached to become homeowner, or like a bonus. If a bonus is a bonus and it's only going to happen once, maybe that should not throw you out. But if you got a kind of job that you get a bonus every year, well, then that's really part of your salary. So let's assume that the situation that Cindy described happens. Maybe there's a great period of a year or 6 months, so we can coach that person to become a homeowner or going into market rate. that's a suggestion. I don't know if people want to discuss that, but then I want to bring up a totally separate point. My other point is I heard that based on the question that was asked, that this may allow a developer to take out equity. We may be able to address deferred maintenance. Well, I'm always very concerned about rewarding bad behavior. I'm not in favor of making it anything easier for developers who defer maintenance, especially if it's on purpose, right? And especially if the choice is if I spend it in maintenance or I spend it in my pocket, or I put it in my pocket. So if we're going to be waiving penalties or making it easier for developers, I think we should reward developers that do maintenance. And those are the ones that should get the special treatment or even a better opportunity to take out more equity or whatever the ask is. So that's my my statement and my addition to this discussion.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Commissioner. In some of the on this policy is that we do need to take in consideration are the developers and whether they're doing it just for the equity that they want to pocket or for the benefit of the developments. And I think that the staff is very mindful of that. And we will, in the board and the committee, we will have to be mindful of those opportunities or missed opportunities. But
I want our policy to be very transparent in that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, the purpose stamp was nice square, right? No fault, Chfa. It was a bad deal that the city cut, right? And the developer took out as much equity as they could, they deferred maintenance as much as they could. When the period of the tax credit was over, they say, you either give me a lot more subsidies or here's the key.
Yep. And
Chfa and the city was left with a property that needed a lot of maintenance.
Absolutely. So on the issue with Cindy and Commissioner about a family that is in a low-income housing fraction unit in, there's noise there, and somebody get a promotion or get a raise, and then the rent will go right to market or whatever income level they are. There are ways, and maybe we can discuss it at the mortgage committee. When I was on my previous life, whenever somebody got a raise and got a promotion, we didn't increase the rents right away. We did it prorated. So if somebody got a significant raise, we just added 2% or 3% every year to catch up because we couldn't just increase the rent and that person just got a job. So we put them in a very hard position. So there are ways that we can look at. Unfortunately, the federal government requires those annual recertifications, but there are ways that we could incentivize some of the developers and property managers to be mindful of those issues.
Yeah, because what happens right now is they're turning it down. I have a colleague who turns down every raise opportunity she gets because she doesn't want to lose her housing or her health insurance. So she has no opportunity to move forward. Because that's what it is. And if she had to pay a part of it, that exceeds the part that would normally be required to be paid is above what her, she's just stuck in an opportunity problem. I have another point that relates to what Commissioner Perez just said. It's related to, there's something in the housing policy that says enables new capital investment in energy savings and environmentally sound property. And I think the expectation is, and I think that was the same point he was making, is the expectation is by enabling cash that it's going to be used for that purpose, but often it isn't. It's just used as profit. It does not go back for these energy saving measures or for improving the properties. So I even think with that policy point, the word enables, to me, I don't know if the word enables meant that there was some kind of requirement that was actually going to happen to invest toward those goals, or just the thought that it was going to free up cash in the hopes that they might do it. But I think that language needs to be a little more clear on what our expectation is related to capital investment in energy savings and sound property investments, et cetera.
We can definitely take a look at that section. In terms of the equity to be taken out of these transactions, we are putting safeguards in place in the guidelines, so they're not going to be able to just take equity out. They have to meet certain requirements. For example, it cannot be at the risk of the property, so funding replacement reserves, looking at escrows, looking at the appraised value of the building, looking at the loan to value, debt coverage, and then based on that, CHFA would approve. But again, for those transactions that are being done as a refinance, the board would be able to see and approve those transactions on a case-by-case basis.
Somebody else.
And I agree with your point, Cynthia, about being clear, because as a regulator, I could tell you, when we go to an entity, we don't always necessarily agree that the intent of the law is being carried out. But the law is written in such a way, or in this case it would be a policy written in such a way that ties the hands of the staff. No matter how diligent you are, no matter how much you want to do a great job, if the policy is not clear or unintentionally causes something to happen you didn't intend, it doesn't really matter, right? Because that behavior that we would not like to see happen would happen. And I'm not saying that that's the case in anything in this document. I was just making a statement about, because of the comment I heard, that it will enable developers to take out equity and address deferred maintenance. And we should not be rewarding, in my opinion, in any way, anybody who defers maintenance because they're trying to be slick or trying to make more money. And we know very well that we've had some bad developers who've done that, right? And at the end of the day, we bail them out because our number one goal is to preserve the affordable units. And as much as I would like to vote against them, and which I had in some cases, I end up voting for most of them because I do want to preserve the affordable units,
Yep.
And I don't want to punish the cities or the communities where those units are located, that if we didn't help, it would stay blighted, Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments?
Yeah, Masuda, can you go over again on instances where the executive director will exercise discretion, what the board reporting regime will be?
Yeah, so we can discuss that internal, or we certainly welcome your feedback if you have thoughts on that. But one idea would be, let's say it's a transaction that occurs after year 20, they don't want to refinance. However, they're still able to, they still satisfy all of the conditions that are laid out in the policy and the guidelines. So, and under that circumstance, CEO, executive director, would have the authority to approve the prepayments, and we could report those to the board on a monthly basis. And again, if there's any exception to that, those transactions would still come to the board, even though CHFA may not be providing the financing, but just simply to approve that prepayment.
Right, so it seems to me that what you would simply want is a template that has the relevant facts for the approval of the prepayment and the basis on how it's accordance to the policy. So if we approve the policy and it's being done in accordance with the policy, you just want to document that, in fact, you've the prepayment authorization was done under the delegation of authority as provided by the resolution, assuming it passes.
Correct.
Any other comments or suggestions for Masuda? Okay, Masuda, do you think you have enough?
No, yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the feedback.
Thank you.
So it's a very important policy, so we want to take time to get your feedback before we bring it back.
Yes, thank you. So Masuda, just go ahead and give us the update on the immediate and temporary financial accommodations for multifamily mortgagors due to COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, thank you. So to date, forbearance agreements have been executed with 7 projects. Last month, the board approved the second forbearance for 2 developments, Lawn Hill Terrace and Oak Park. Those forbearance agreements are currently in process. We have not received any new requests since what was approved last month. The current monthly forbearance is approximately $6,800 on unpaid principal balance of about $587,000. Demand continues to be lower than expected, so while we have the program active, it's going to run through end of June. We're going to continue to evaluate it and see if we need to bring back another extension just because COVID continues to impact our properties. So with that being said, that's it from me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Suram. Any questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Suram. We have one more item to take action. If I can have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Shelley, did you get a second?
I just want to say that I need to abstain regarding the minutes of the last meeting because I wasn't here.
All right, thanks. Shelley?
I also need to abstain as I was only present for half of the last meeting.
Thank you. Kylie, anybody else? Okay, Shelley.
Sarah Abraham?
Aye.
Cindy Butt?
Yes.
Wendy Clark?
Yes.
Kylie Goslin?
Yes, as it relates to the issues not including the minutes for my request to abstain from that portion.
Tim Hodges?
Aye.
Yes, except for the minutes.
Kathy McKinnon?
Aye.
Sheila Mascaro-Bruno?
Yes.
George Perez?
Yes.
Franklin Perry?
Aye.
Sarah Sanders?
Aye.
Lisa Tepper Bates? Lisa Tepper Bates? She may have stepped off. Greg Dugaldi?
Aye.
We have 2 abstentions on the minutes, and Lisa Tepper Bates was not present.
Thank you. Motion carries. We have 10 minutes. If anybody has any comment or wants to talk about anything, or we can go home early.
And the only thing I want to mention is the obvious that with the American Cares, whatever you're going to call a stimulus thing that's happening in Washington, we're going to be impacted. Chfa and DOH in particular are going to be impacted tremendously because, we're going to be asked to help people with rent issues and people who currently are falling behind in their mortgages. So I really would like if staff could come back and take a look at the current operation, and we don't have a crystal ball, right? So we don't know how all the details. But if there's any changes that need to happen, I know we have to pass a budget, but I would like us to start thinking about, and if there's any approvals we need to start putting into place to facilitate that transition. Or maybe there is going to be no impact the way I think it's going to be,
Yeah, I think Nandini has been thinking about that. Nandini?
Yeah, I have. We've been looking at the entire organization. Commissioner, we've been looking at the entire organization, but you bring up a really good point because we are going to get, I hate to use the word slammed, but unfortunately that's going to happen sooner than later. So I'm happy to have that discussion internally and, keep the board informed.
And at least maybe, at least in the finance committee, if you don't want to tie off the whole board, and then the finance committee could give a summary. But in particular, like private mortgages, right, which most of those stimulus programs don't address, that's going to be a big issue. And I can tell you that last time I looked at it, it was like 17,000 plus Connecticut residents that the banks I regulate, or that the CBA told me were in some sort of deferred program in Connecticut, right? At different levels. I can tell you some of those are going to need help, and that's a lot of people. And I'm not saying all 17 plus are going to need help,
Yeah, and just FYI for you guys on the rent relief, the state is receiving about $235 million from Treasury for the rent relief. The Department of Housing has been working on setting up a system, more automated than what we had before since we did a lot of manual work, and thanks to Chfa staff, we were able to deploy about $25 million. We were able to deploy $25 million and help about 6,700 families. The resource went directly to the landlords. So on this next round that we are going to start next week, we're going to have like a soft opening of the application for those applicants that apply to the previous program and they did not get processed. So just given the opportunity to submit their applications, we are partnering with the housing counseling agencies. We're partnering with the Board of Education, trying to help families. This is more about accessibility of technology. The goal is that everybody could do more of the work through a computer, iPad or iPhone. But we also understand that there are those that do not have access to electronics or internet. So we have been working in creating that network so that people have accessibility, including partnering with the workplace where they have a mobile bus that they have about 11 computers, and we can move it around the states or those communities that don't have access to internet. So more to come. We are working around the clock. We hired a new director. We have 2 managers that will come on board on Monday. And so the state is trying to work as much as we can with our partners and minimize the hiring, because it's just a process and we don't have time for processes. So the goal is just about 6 people that we're going to hire just to keep our internal controls in place. So more to come at the next meeting. Probably I can give you a little more information. Yes, Cindy.
Yeah. Can I ask, have decisions been made about what type of relief is going to happen, how many months in arrears, or if it's going to permit future payments? Have decisions been made about what components are going to be included?
Yes. We have up to, the assistance is up to 12 months. We could go back up to 6 months of arrears, and the prospective rents, it can be done at in a 3-month increments. So we will be doing at the beginning, probably it's going to be 9 months, because we could go up to 6 months and then 3 months perspective. A tenant can come back and provide income verification to demonstrate that they still need the resources. So it can go up to 12 months, and then there is one more 3 months extension if that person demonstrates that they still need that assistance, and if we still have money. There will be also assistance for utilities, gas and electric, up to $1,500 in arrears. And what else? The assistance is up to $10,000.
Is there a document somewhere that
can you provide us that in writing? Oh. I'm sorry.
I said the same thing.
So, Cindy, what was that?
Oh, I was saying the same thing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can we get a copy of the document that has the information, or is that public yet?
It's not. We finalized in the last.
It becomes public.
The public Treasury issued their clarifications. We were waiting also for clarification from Treasury. They released a couple of days ago, and that is public information. The guidance for the program for Connecticut, we finalizing. I can send you a copy. Friday we'll do the final changes because we send it to the governor's office, OPM, and we all have to weigh in. But more likely is what I just mentioned, the highlights. And yes, we will. It will be all the information will be on our website. And everywhere we're going to be marketing this program, not like before, but we will be taking a very proactive role.
And I would appreciate it if you have someone in your office email it to us, though.
Commissioner,
if you have someone in your office, if you could have someone in your office email us that information whenever it's final.
Yes.
That'd be appreciated.
Okay.
And as Rob pointed out, there's still more to come. I mean, as we look at what's going on Capitol Hill in D.C., we still have some things that are going to come our way from that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I think one of the things Rob mentioned under the America's CARES Act, or whatever it's going to be called, is is mortgage assistance, and that's kind of some of the work we're doing right now, is looking to see what other states have done, especially with respect to federal funds. The last time, during the Great Recession, when there were some, hardest hit states at that time who received a lot of federal money, and they used it for mortgage assistance. Those programs are good templates for us to look at now before we even, get the award, to kind of be looking at that.
Any other comments?
I mean, I just want to finish up by saying, like, for instance, one of my concerns is the call center, right? There's no way that this type of initiative is not going to generate a lot of calls into Chfa, DOH, and other agencies, right? We should start thinking about, do we subcontract with 211? Do we bring in temporary, what steps to bring in temporary help if that's the case? Because I believe our staff is going to work hard, and I believe our staff is going to do everything they can to help people. But if we have a system set up that handles, and I'm making up numbers, okay, 100 calls a day, but now you're getting 2,000 a day, I don't care how good our staff is. They're not going to be able to handle it, right?
Yep.
And we need to learn from some of those complaints that we heard in the past when other stuff has been put in place, that people don't read, people are going to call in.
Yeah.
No?
All right, well,
and that's what I mean about starting to do some prep work, because we know we're going to get some money, right? Whether it's 250 million, whether it's 260, whether you could put it here, you could put it there. It's all going to translate to one thing. We're going to help people, and people are going to call.
That's exactly right. Every time when we announce it, we will have a lot of calls, and we know that. All right, so that's it for today. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.